morning, everyone. Welcome to Reading with a Ranger this week. We're doing it inside because it's raining again, which is awesome. This theme for this week is Winter Wonderland, and in San Mateo County we do not experience snow, but we experience a different kind of precipitation, rain. But first we're going to talk about the story of snow, the science of winter's wonder, written by Mark Cassino with John Nelson, PhD. And this book is published by Chronicle Books of San Francisco, The Story of Snow. Our story starts on a winter day high up in the sky in a cloud that is very, very cold. This is the story of snow. Clouds are mostly made of air, which we can't see. Then there is water vapor, water in the form of a gas, which we also can't see. We do see billions of tiny droplets of liquid water and ice crystals that float in the cloud. They reflect light, making the cloud visible. Snow begins with a speck. Clouds are mostly made of air and water, but there are also bits of other things, like tiny particles of dirt, ash, and salt. Even living bacteria can float in the wind and end up in a cloud. A snow crystal needs one of these specks to start growing. These specks are all much smaller than the eye can see, but if you could see them, here's what some of them might be. Ash or soot from a volcano or fire, a grain of pollen from a flower, salt left over from ocean water that evaporates, a particle of soil, or a bacteria from plants. Any one of those specks then becomes the center of a snow crystal. When a speck gets cold enough, water vapor will stick to it. If you had a microscope, you could see such small things. Here's what you would see. Water vapor sticks to the cold speck, making the speck wet. We're going to start right here, right there. More water vapor sticks to the wet speck, forming a water droplet. The droplet freezes into a ball of ice. More water vapor sticks to the ball of ice, and it grows into a hexagon-shaped ice crystal. Right there. Water vapor continues to stick to the crystal. Faster growth on the corners causes thick branches to sprout until it gets to that size. The branches keep growing, sprouting little arms of their own. And a beautiful snow crystal is born. A snow crystal forms as it falls. A snow crystal gets bigger and heavier. As the snow crystal gets bigger and heavier, it starts to fall to earth. It keeps growing as it falls through its cloud, taking on its own special shape. The shape depends on how wet the cloud is and how cold it is. A snow crystal can start to grow one way, but then grow another way when it passes through a wetter or colder part of its cloud. The crystal stops growing after falling below the clouds. These are photographs of real snow crystals shown much larger than their actual size. The crystals were collected during many different snowfalls. So this, right here where my finger is, that's the actual size of a snow crystal. And these are all the different types that were formed in different storms based on how wet and cold the clouds are that they fall from. Pretty cool, huh? Snow crystals can be stars. One common snow crystal shape is the star. Star-shaped snow crystals usually have 6 arms reaching out from a center point. The center point is the home of the speck that started the crystal. The 6 arms look alike, but they are almost never exactly alike. Here's some examples of stars. Star-shaped snow crystals are called dendrites, meaning tree-like. They form when a cloud is full of moisture and when the temperature hovers around 5 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 15 degrees Celsius. Snow crystals can be plates. Plate crystals are thin like star crystals, but they don't have arms. The simplest kind of plate is a hexagon with 6 straight sides. More complicated plates have points where arms almost grew. Similar plate crystals are much smaller than stars. They can be as wide as 1 millimeter, but they are usually a lot smaller. There's some examples, some plates. This is the simplest kind of plate crystal, a hexagon. Plates form when there's not enough moisture in the cloud for stars to form, and when the temperature conditions are a few degrees warmer or colder than the temperature range that stars require. And snow crystals can also be columns. I've never seen one like that. Column-shaped snow crystals are shaped like pencils. They're not flat like stars and plates. Columns can form high in the clouds and at very cold temperatures. They are very tiny, and when they fall, they make for very slippery snow. A column has 6 sides, and here are 3 different types of them. Let's see. We've got a solid column, hollow column, and a capped column. And this one in the bigger picture is a capped column. The 2 end caps can grow to different sizes, as you can see here. Kind of looks like a spool if anyone's into sewing. 6 is the magic number for snow crystals. This is because of the nature of water. Water molecules are the smallest unit of water, attach themselves into groups of 6, which usually leads to crystals with 6 arms or sides. A perfect star or plate snow crystal has 6-fold symmetry. That means if you divided the crystal into 6 pie wedges, each pie wedge would have the same shape. Here's an example of it divided up. Water molecules attach to each other in 6-sided rings, like 6 kids holding hands. When many of these hexagonal rings are joined together, a larger hexagonal crystal is formed, just like that. If you think of a star crystal as a clock, the arms of a star crystal can point to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12 o'clock. Just like, let's see, there. 12 at the top, 6 at the bottom. Pretty cool. Snow crystals are rarely perfect. So much can happen during a snow crystal's fall to Earth, it is rare that one will turn out perfectly. If a droplet of water passes close to one arm of a snow crystal, that arm can start to grow faster. Before long, one arm will be a lot longer than the others. Here's an example of one. Can you notice which arm is longer than the others? A snow crystal can be a twin. A snow crystal can have 12 arms. This is a twin crystal, which happens when 2 crystals start from the original speck and form on top of each other. That's pretty cool. A snow crystal can also have bumps. If there are enough water droplets near the crystal, some can strike the crystal and freeze on contact, and this gives the crystal little bumps called rime. R-I-M-E. Do you see the little bumps? Many snow crystals can make one snowflake. Often, snow crystals bump into each other and get stuck together. When this happens, snowflakes form. Hundreds or even thousands of snow crystals can be found in a single snowflake. 2 snow crystals stuck together here, right there. Snowflakes we see falling from the sky are usually clumps of snow crystals like these. Individual crystals, which are sometimes also called snowflakes, can fall on their own, but they are much smaller and harder to see. Here's an example of a ton of them all pieced together. Once a snow crystal lands, it starts to wither away. Snow crystals can't keep growing after they fall from the clouds, and when a crystal stops growing, it immediately starts to wither. Soon the arms of the crystal break down and the crystal shape becomes rounded. This means that if you want to see a snow crystal, you need to catch it in the air or find it very soon after it lands. Here's an example of one on someone's mitten. Are no two snow crystals alike? Some simple plate crystals may appear exactly alike as seen through a high-quality microscope. When it comes to more complicated snow crystals, though, odds are that no two are exactly alike. But then no two leaves, flowers, or people are exactly alike either. Snow crystals are like us. We're each different, but we have a lot in common. All right, and then if you live in a place where you can find snow, which is not really in San Mateo County unless it's a very, very cold evening and you're on top of skyline. But if you are in a place that has instructions on how to catch a snow crystal, and it involves getting a piece of cardboard so that you can catch it as it falls, and then a magnifying glass so you can see it better once it hits the cardboard. And then there's a quote at the end saying, "A snow crystal is a letter from the sky." Ikichiro Nakaya, Japanese scientist. All right, so that was The Story of Snow, The Science of Winter's Wonder by Mark Cassino with John Nelson, PhD. Okay, next, I want to read one of my favorite books from when I was a kid. It's called The Mitten, written by Jan Brett, and it's all a story about this mitten, this white mitten in the middle. Lots of fun stuff happens. All right, The Mitten, a Ukrainian folk tale adapted and illustrated by Jan Brett. And this is published by Penguin Group. All right, this has a lot going on in the illustrations, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time for you to notice what's happening. Once there was a boy named Nicky who wanted his new mittens made from wool as white as snow. See, there's Nicky's grandma picking out some yarn. And then over here, she is too. At first, his grandmother, Baba, did not want to knit white mittens. "If you drop one in the snow," she warned, "you'll never find it." But Nicky wanted snow white mittens, and finally, Baba made them. There she is starting. After she finished, she said, "When you come home, first I will look to see if you are safe and sound, but then I will look to see if you still have your snow white mittens." So off Nicky went, and it wasn't long until one of his new mittens dropped in the snow and was left behind. But who do we have in this picture? Does anyone know what that is? There's Nicky up in the tree, and his mitten right on the ground. A mole, that was our animal, tired from tunneling along, discovered the mitten and burrowed inside. It was cozy and warm and just the right size, so he decided to stay. Okay, we've got Nicky running, and very close up, we have the mole finding the mitten, and then a new friend is joining us right here. A snowshoe rabbit came hopping by. He stopped for a moment to admire his winter coat. It was then that he saw the mitten, and he wiggled in, feet first. The mole didn't think there was enough room for both of them, but when he saw the rabbit's big kickers, he moved over. There's Nicky still playing. There's the rabbit and the mole in that mitten, and we have a new friend joining. Next, a hedgehog came snuffling along, having spent the day looking under wet leaves for things to eat. He decided to move into the mitten and warm himself. The mole and the rabbit were bumped and jostled, but not being ones to argue with someone covered with prickles, they made room. And we have a new friend joining. And Nikki is still playing. Hasn't noticed that he's missing a mitten yet. As soon as the hedgehog disappeared into the mitten, a big owl, attracted by the commotion, swooped down. When he decided to also move in, the mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog grumbled. But when they saw the owl's glinty talons, they quickly let him in. Let's see. There's Nikki, still playing. And the owl. And another friend. Up through the snow appeared a badger. He eyed the mitten and began to climb in. The mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, and the owl were not pleased, but there was no room left. But when they saw his diggers, they gave him the thumb. There's Nikki still playing. And another friend. It started snowing, but the animals were snug in the mitten. A waft of warm steam rose in the air, and a fox trotting by stopped to investigate. Just the sight of the cozy mitten made him feel drowsy. The fox poked his muzzle in. When the mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog, the owl, and the badger saw his shiny teeth, they gave the fox lots of room. Nikki. And the fox is joining, and we have another friend. Do you think a bear can fit in this mitten too? A great bear lumbered by. He spied the mitten, all plumped up. Not being one to be left out in the cold, he began to nose his way in. The animals were packed in as tightly as could be, but what animal would argue with a bear? The mitten swelled and stretched. It was pulled and bulged to many times its size, but Baba's good mitten held fast. There's Nikki. Still hasn't noticed that he's missing his mitten. And there's the bear. And someone else wants to join. Along came a meadow mouse. No bigger than an acorn, she wriggled into the one space left and made herself comfortable on top of the great bear's nose. But I think Nikki is finally noticing that he's missing his mitten. The big bear, tickled by the mouse's whiskers, gave an enormous sneeze. Chew! The force of the sneeze shot the mitten up into the sky and scattered the animals in all directions. Now Nikki's looking for his mitten. What a commotion. Still looking. On his way home, Nikki saw a white shape in the distance. It was the lost mitten silhouetted against the blue sky. As he ran to catch his snow-white mitten, he saw Baba's face in the window. First she looked to see if he was safe and sound, and then she saw that he still had his new mittens. But looks like he has some explaining to do. All right, that was The Mitten by Jan Brett. Really fun story. Apparently it's a Ukrainian folktale adapted. All right, our last book today is called Animals in Winter. It is written by Henrietta Bancroft and Richard Van Gelder and illustrated by Helen Davy. Again, these are some animals that we probably don't see in our parks, but some of them are. Animals in winter. The days grow short, the nights grow long, it's getting colder, winter is coming. Leaves have fallen from the trees, there are no berries on the bushes, and insects are gone. The grass is dead and brown. Birds and other animals are getting ready for winter. Some of the birds fly south. Bluebirds and orioles go toward the south. They go where it's warm and sunny, where there's food for them to eat. When spring comes, the birds will make the long journey back, and they migrate. There's a red-winged blackbird. Some butterflies migrate too. That is what monarch butterflies do. They gather in a tree by the hundreds before cold weather comes. They will stay in the tree all night. In the morning, they fly toward their winter homes in the south. Right now is a great time to go see butterflies, monarch butterflies. Some of them rest in some of our parks along the coast, and also down in Pacific Grove area on their journey down to Mexico. Many bats fly south too. Some bats stay in the north all winter. When the weather gets cold, they go into a cave. There is no wind or snow in the cave. The bats sleep there all winter. They do not eat. They live on fat stored inside them. They do not move. They hardly breathe, and they sleep, sleep, sleep. They hibernate. Woodchucks hibernate too. When fall comes, a woodchuck eats and eats and eats. He eats grass, twigs, and leaves. He grows fat. When it gets cold, the woodchuck crawls into his long tunnel and goes to sleep. How many wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And this is the tunnel that he lives in. They have different chambers. So this is the sleeping chamber here. We've got a toilet chamber. And there's a drop down here and it narrows so that it can keep out any enemies or predators that the woodchuck might have. Then they have a porch area where they watch. And then there's a secret entrance at the top. Very, very cool. The woodchuck. Does he sleep for a day? Longer than that. Does he sleep for a week? Longer than that. A month? Even longer. A woodchuck can sleep as long as 4 months. It's a long time. The woodchuck seems hardly alive. He breathes very slowly. His heart beats slowly. He sleeps and sleeps and sleeps. He hibernates. Some animals do not have to hibernate. They gather food and save it for the winter. That is what a pika does. A pika looks like a little rabbit with round ears. Pikas live in high mountains where winters are long and cold. They eat grass. In the summer, they cut more grass than they can eat. They spread the grass on flat stones, and the hot sun dries it. By the end of summer, a pika may have gathered 50 pounds of grass. She hides it under rocks. In the winter, she eats the dry grass, and it keeps her alive. We don't have pikas in our parks, but there are some in the Sierra Nevada. Squirrels gather food too and save it for winter. They dig holes in the ground and bury hickory nuts and acorns. When winter comes, they dig them up and eat them. Sometimes squirrels forget where they buried the nuts. Trees may grow from the nuts that squirrels forget. We have plenty of squirrels in our parks. Some animals do not get ready for winter at all. They do not store food and they do not hibernate. They do not migrate. They must hunt for food all winter long. There are mice that must hunt all winter for seeds of goldenrod, asters, and other wild plants. Sometimes they eat farmers' corn, oats, and wheat. Deer must dig in the snow for dried leaves, plants, and moss. When the snow is deep, they must eat the twigs and and barks of trees. The rabbit must hunt under the snow for bits of grass and plants. When the snow is deep, he too eats the buds and barks of bushes so that he can stay alive. In the winter, the fox hunts for mice and rabbits. The fox house has discovered a mouse in its tunnel beneath the snow. When the winter is cold and the snow is deep, many animals cannot find food. Here are some ways you can help animals in the winter. Make a peanut and popcorn garland. Hang a suet in a net bag. Suet is a type of protein that some birds really need. Stick fruit and cheese pieces on a dead branch. Nail a seed tray with drainage holes to a fence post. Let's see. Plant shrubs with berries or food and shelter. Right here. Make sure feeders are placed out of reach of predators. Put a birdhouse in a tree or under the eaves of your house. Hang an ear of corn for squirrels and chipmunks. Please remember, once you begin feeding birds and other wild animals in your yard in winter, you must continue. They are depending on the food you supply. Eventually, the days grow longer, the nights grow shorter, and it begins to get warmer, and spring is coming. All right, so that was Animals in Winter, written by Henrietta Bancroft, Richard Van Gelder, and illustrated by Helen Davey. So in our winter, we don't have snow like we were talking about earlier, but we do. It does get colder, and the food supply does go down because there are a lot of evergreen trees in our parks, which means that they don't lose their leaves, but there are a lot of deciduous trees in our parks, which means that they do lose their leaves in winter. So there is less food available in winter than other seasons for animals. There are some plants that are really helpful for squirrels and birds, and one of them is toyon. Toyon is often known as Christmas berry, and that's partially because it has its berries right around the winter solstice time. So this past week, we've seen a lot of toyon that has berries out, and they're bright red berries. You can find them in our parks, and those are a great source of food for birds and small mammals, and even foxes and coyotes and things like that. You'll find that type of berry in their scat sometimes, so you know that they're eating it. And so we got a lot of great different plants that come out in the winter that are kind of balancing out the other plants that are not as commonly found. So also right now we have the buckeye trees. They're losing their buckeye seeds, which are a good source of food too for animals in winter. And also the bay trees are losing their nuts. So the bay trees have little nuts that fall down from their branches, and like we saw in the book, the squirrel will find these and hide them, or and then they'll probably lose most of them, and then forget what they are, and then we'll have more bay trees grow. So those are some of the cool things that you can find in our parks right now during the winter. This month we're going to try something new. So if you are used to watching Reading with a Ranger every weekend, we're going to try a new format, and next week we're going to come at you with a craft, arts and crafts. And so early in the week we're going to post what materials you might need for this arts and craft project that we're going to do next Saturday, and I hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, be sure to check out your local libraries in San Mateo County. Our libraries have a great program where you can check out books online and then go to the store for to the library for a contact-free pickup. So check that out right now, and if you want any more resources about fun things to do in parks and anything like that, you can check out the Explore from Home page on our website. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you next week for Arts and Crafts. Bye everyone.